Back on. Before we begin, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Just a quick few housekeeping rules. We're doing this as a Zoom webinar, so everyone is joining without video and some limited functionality. And obviously your audio is muted at the moment, but at the end of this, we'll have a Q&A, so you'll have plenty of time to ask questions. You can type questions in the box and we'll get to them at the end, or once the Q&A starts, you can just raise your hand and we'll give you opportunity to speak. I'd also should say that the session is being recorded and will be made available online in the resources page. So before I hand over to Fiona to give you an intro into the project, I just want to say it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the entire repliCATS team, which you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen. The project really relies on the hard work of a lot of people. We have, of course, the core team in Melbourne, but we have various subcontractors around the world that are helping us out. But obviously the project could not happen without participants like yourselves. So warm welcome to you all. So what's next in this session? Fiona is going to give you an introduction to repliCATS. For some of you, that'll be sort of revising, but you'll also find that we've done a lot of different things this time round in phase 2. So hang tight for some new information about the platform. And then we'll actually give you a platform demo, which is a video, and I will talk you through the logistics of how the week is going to work. And then, as I said, there'll be a Q&A, so lots of time for you to ask questions of us. We'll hand over to you, Fiona.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona. I'm the lead PI on this project, and I've met many of you before. I think we have about 50-50 return participants and new people in this workshop, which is actually fantastic. Something really weird's happening to the slides in my view. Is that just me? Is my computer dying?
I don't know.
That's happening in mine as well. There's a grey patch.
Yeah, okay. Let's just move on to the next slide anyway.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's looking
right. I'm relieved that it's not just me. So what that says under the grey patch, if you've got the grey patch, is DARPA SCORE. And so this slide is here to for me to just tell you a little bit about the overall program that repliCATS sits within. And I know those of you who are returning to this workshop, Catherine's got an answer. I think it's the Zoom panels from the person sharing the screen. It's your fault, Hans.
Oh, amazing. I mean, thank you so much. But let me just figure out how to get rid of that.
Well, for the moment, it's not obscuring anything. Oh, spoke too soon.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Our participants are giving you solutions in the chat.
Okay, thanks you guys. This is why we have you. Thank you.
DARPA, this project, this overall program that repliCATS sits within, I think is pretty interesting because it's, well, for lots of reasons, partly the scale of it, but also because it's funded by DARPA, the US Department of Defense, who are an end user of research. So this is the first time that we've seen investment from end users or consumers of research into these problems of replication and reproducibility in the sciences. So most previous work on this has been funded by philanthropic bodies rather than mainstream research funders or, as I mentioned in this case, end users of research. So I feel like this program is in many ways a tipping point, I think, in the kind of scientific reforms that we're interested in. So let me explain the broader program. It has what DARPA calls 3 technical aspects. In the first technical aspect, which is being run by Brian Nosak, Tim Errington and others at the Centre for Open Science, they are curating the data set. So they are selecting and curating the papers that you will be evaluating in this workshop and that you have evaluated in previous workshops. So they send us papers. They're also coordinating the replication studies and the other ground truthing for the project. So they've got a big, whenever I think about how big our task is, I remember what they're doing, and it's completely overwhelming and makes what we're doing look easy. Our project sits within technical aspect too. So this is the human prediction part of the project. In the first phase, there were a couple of teams in this aspect. So there was another team running a prediction market, as well as our team running our structured group elicitation. In this second phase of the project, there's just us. We were the only team selected to go into the second phase of the project. So what we're doing, as you know, is collecting human evaluations from experts such as yourselves about the replicability and, in this phase, the credibility of research. In the third aspect of the project, and this is really kind of the blue sky DARPA part of the project, they have several machine learning teams which are trying to outpredict our human predictions. So they're developing algorithms, building software that controls through the published literature and assign reliability or confidence scores to publish papers. And there are 3 different teams in that. So you can see, like, the whole program together is absolutely enormous. And while we're collecting human predictions of about 4,000 papers across both phases, the machine learning teams in the third aspect are working with a data set of 30,000 papers. So this is, you know, an unprecedented scale. Okay, the next slide.
Yeah, it's coming. Sorry.
That's all right. I think on the next slide it talks about the discipline. Yeah, so this is, you've seen this one before as well, if you've been here before. So in the first phase, we evaluated 3,000 articles from 62 journals across these 8 disciplines: business, criminology, economics, education, political science, psychology, public administration, which is basically government and law, and sociology, but only quantitative sociology papers. In fact, only quantitative papers across all of these disciplines. So in addition to that, we also assessed 100 COVID preprints. That was an extra little task that DARPA threw at us at the last minute after the pandemic hit. And some of you may have been involved in those workshops that we ran assessing those COVID papers as well. So we have done an extraordinary number of evaluations over the last 2 years. And that is because of people like yourselves. In fact, we have had now over 550 participants from 40 different countries across all of these 8 research fields. That's a lot of people, especially to have built a community like that during a pandemic. For you all to have contributed your time to this project during what has been, the last 18 months is extraordinary. We run a combination of face-to-face workshops and then these kind of remote elicitations. And you can see some stats here that for each of the claims that we've assessed, we've had at least 4, usually 5 or 6 assessments per claim. So that's over 14,000 individual assessments and over 43,000 justifications or expressions of reasoning for those judgments. This is a very, very big data set. And if any of you are interested, if you have research interests in this area, please get in touch because we've got more data than we know what to do with at the moment. Okay, now, next slide. So we thought you might be interested in hearing about some of our phase 1 results. So the results that actually meant that we were the team that got selected to join the second phase over the prediction markets team. As you know, well, for those of you who have done this before, you would know that our discussion groups, our idea protocol groups are not about reaching consensus. In fact, we encourage diversity of opinions, and we mathematically aggregate your probabilities and your scores at the end of that. In fact, we have a suite of 22 aggregation methods that we use to transform the individual judgments that you give us in your groups into group judgments or combined judgments for the confidence scores that we submit to our funders. So these aggregation methods, the models that we're using, fall into a few different categories. So some are linear combinations of the best estimates, so they're just transformed best estimates or distributions. Some are linear combinations of best estimates that are weighted by different things, so different proxies that we've identified that might indicate forecasting performance. So this might be, for example, the number of independent reasons that you give us in your justification, or how certain or uncertain you are about a particular judgment. And then we've got, in the third category, we've got a couple of Bayesian approaches as well. So we've been evaluated, as I said, against the replication outcomes that are being coordinated by the Centre for Open Science. So they're coordinating a whole bunch of replication studies, and then we compare the outcomes of those replication studies to the judgments that our participants have given us. And here we're looking at our results for direct replication studies, which is how we framed our replicability question in phase 1. And we find that 18 out of these 22 methods exceed the phase 1 goal of 0.7. So on this slide here, you'll see 3 different measures of accuracy. AUC, which is an area under the curve, that's the official metric that DARPA are using to evaluate us. Brier score, which is another kind of proper scoring rule for accuracy, and classification accuracy. So, you know, how many times we said the study would replicate, and in fact it did replicate. So that's just a simple percentage. So some of our best methods here have classification accuracy of around 74–75%, and AUCs of about 0.78, approaching 0.8, which is, you know, really high, really, really good. And for this data set anyway, outperformed the prediction markets that were running on the same claims. So we're very proud of our phase 1 results, and we're very proud of all of you who've been part of our workshops before. And as I said, we have a whole lot of data here, an extraordinary amount of data. So if you do have research interests in this area, get in touch with us. We won't be able to share the data with you until after the workshops are finished, of course, but we'd love to hear from you. Okay, so many of you have done this before, some of you haven't, and there'll be more information for you coming up. But I want to tell you now what's different about phase 2. So in phase 1, we had really one primary focus, which was predicting replicability. So if you did this experiment again, what's the probability that you get the same result, or a result consistent with the original? And we were only looking at one single claim per paper. So if you imagine this, this little network diagram here is supposed to represent the structure of a paper. So at the top you have this level 1 or title claim, which is often the actual literal title of the paper. Then at the next level, there might be a couple of more precise research claims in the abstract, for example. And then at the third level, you sort of get down to individual hypotheses. And then at the final level here, there are individual bits of evidence. So the outcomes of particular statistical tests or particular descriptive results that support or fail to support the higher level hypotheses. So in the first phase, we were interested only in a single trace of a claim. So we were looking at just one of these little level 4 blue dots that was connected to the overall claim. Sometimes not very well, as those of you from previous workshops will remember, that there often was not very much connection between those individual statistical results and the higher level claim that they were supposed to correspond to. So what's different in this phase is that we are evaluating basically the whole paper. So we're getting much closer to a traditional form of peer review. So we're looking at about half the questions you'll answer in these workshops refer to the overall paper. So judging the quality of the entire set of claims across the paper. And then the other half will refer to a selected number of these little blue level 4 claims. There'll definitely be more than one. The exact number will vary from paper to paper. Okay, so that's the first big change, is that we're looking at the whole paper rather than just a single trace of a claim. The other big change is that in addition to asking you about replicability, we're now interested in a whole suite of credibility signals. So we know that replicability is only one measure of credibility, and there are others, like what's on the next slide. So here are the things that we'll be asking you to evaluate. We'll be asking you to evaluate comprehensibility, so how readable the paper is, prior plausibility, how intuitive or consistent with your prior beliefs the overall claim of the paper is, how transparent you believe the paper is, how replicable the results are, how robust the results are, how valid the construction of the test is, how generalizable you think these results would be to other circumstances, and then the overall credibility, which is a bit of an undefined dimension that is supposed to cover the previous 7 dimensions plus anything else you think is relevant. So this is a much bigger task. As I said, we're really working our way towards now having a comprehensive, rapid, interactive peer review protocol, which is our personal goal in repliCATS. So let's have a closer look at some of these paper level questions now. The first question, comprehensibility, will be familiar if you've done this before. Just how well do you understand the paper? Plausibility asks you how consistent the central claim of the paper is with your existing beliefs. Transparency. Now this one, it's important to point out here that we don't expect you to do a thorough search of all the supplementary materials or attempt any computational reproducibility studies of your own. This is based on a quick read of the paper. How transparent do you think the research described is? So do the authors make it very obvious from the outset that data is available, the code is available, for example? Okay, replicability will be familiar to you. This is the same as what we've asked, if you've done these workshops before. So if you ran a close replication of this study, what's the probability that the central claim would find results consistent with the original paper? Robustness, which is about independent analysis, would that be consistent with the original paper? Generalizability is going to be quite, well, you may find this takes a fair bit of time to judge this, or longer than some of the other things. So this is where we ask you to go beyond close replications or simple reanalyses and think about how well the main findings of this paper would generalise to other ways of investigating this research question. And we'll be asking you to think about things like, would the results change if you changed the setting? Would the results change if you changed the population, and so on? Validity is a question that will come in 3 parts. We'll ask about how well the design of the research, the statistical tests and whether they're appropriate, and how well calibrated or reasonable the conclusions are. So are the conclusions, overhyped, for example? And then credibility, I already mentioned. So, how do you add up all of these dimensions and whatever else you think are important to give us your overall kind of impression of this paper, an overall score for the paper. And then after you've done all of that to evaluate the overall paper, then we'll show you some of those specific level 4 claims and ask a couple of extra questions about those. So these questions are really just asking whether any of these level 4 claims, whether you'd give a different overall judgment for those for credibility. So for example, you might think that overall the paper is not very credible, that you think you would give that a low score, but you might find that there are some particular bits of evidence within it that, you know, seem actually on their own fine. And so you would indicate to us in this question that those particular bits of evidence in themselves do seem credible. The next question asks you about relevance. So, you know, in this case, it might be that you've given the paper an overall low score. You've identified some claims that actually, some bits of evidence that do seem totally fine, but they're not the bits of evidence that you consider most relevant to the overall paper. So you'd give those a low relevance score. You can also imagine the opposite scenario where you've given the overall paper a high credibility score, but you've identified some particular bits of evidence that seem problematic. So you want to give those a lower score, but you decide that they're not particularly relevant to the overall claims, so that that rating stays high. Okay, and then there'll be one more question that we'll ask, which is a question that matches our question from phase 1 about replicability. You'll only be asked that question once, so. And okay, so just a word for those, this is really for those of you who are new. Most of our questions will ask you for a point estimate. So to give a score or a probability, depending on the question, between 0 and 100. So most questions will ask you for a score. For the credibility and replicability questions, you'll see that we also ask you to put some bounds around that. So this is to tell us how confident or how sure you feel about the estimates that you've given. And we ask for those bounds in a 3-step format. So for the replicability question, for example, we'd ask, what's the probability that close replications of this study would find a statistically significant effect in the same direction as the original claim? We'll ask you to put a lower bound on that, an upper bound on that, and then only after you've done those two things to give us a best estimate. This is a question format that we developed in a previous expert elicitation project that we believe reduces excess overconfidence in people's responses by making them consider what conditions make the outcome likely, what conditions make the outcome unlikely, as separate questions. Okay. This will be familiar to anyone who's done this before, but if you're new, this is our elicitation method. This is our idea protocol. So in the first instance, we'll be asking you to read the papers that you've given and provide your own private judgments about those. So to basically work through the whole set of questions on your own, giving us your private judgments about the paper. Then in the next stage, you'll join the rest of your group members in a discussion. You'll get to see the judgments of other people in your group, and you'll get to discuss them as well. So you'll get to interrogate, answers that are very different from yours. And then we'll ask you to update those answers to make some private second round judgments after you've had your group discussion. And then finally, we mathematically aggregate those using the models that I described earlier. And is there anything else you wanted to say about that?
No, I don't think so. I can go through more of the logistics specifically, which I think will be of interest in a bit, but we'll get you to have a look through the platform. So thank you, Fiona, for running through the background, and we'll just have a look at what that actually looks like on platform.
Hi, my name is Helen, and in this video I'm going to introduce the repliCATS Bushel platform you'll be using to assess papers. If you have participated in repliCATS workshops before, the platform should look familiar to you. Once you log in...
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Helen, and in this video I'm going to introduce the repliCATS Bushel platform you'll be using to assess papers. If you have participated in repliCATS workshops before, the platform should look familiar to you. Once you log in, you will be ported into the home page, which you can see here. On this screen, you will see the papers assigned to your group and available for you to assess. Usually, this will be 2 to 3 papers. On the top right of the screen, you will see the avatar you have been assigned. All your judgments in the platform will be made and displayed using this avatar. Now I'm going to show you what round 1 looks like. When evaluating these papers, we will ask you to first make a series of judgments at the paper level before then proceeding to evaluate a subset of specific results presented in the paper. On the left-hand panel, you will see the information available to you for the first set of paper-level questions. As you can see, this is quite minimal. You have the paper title, abstract, and a link to the full text for the paper. On the right-hand panel are the first set of paper-level questions, and this is where you enter your estimates and justifications. You will see here a stationary question navigation panel, showing you the number of questions. This panel is interactive. Clicking on a number will take you to that specific question. We recommend you work through these questions in the order presented, from 1 to 8. For each question, where we are asking for reasoning, you'll see grayed out placeholder text with information for answering that question. You can also hover over the tooltip that provides further guidance and clarification to participants for that particular question. Finally, you can save each of your responses as you go, but you don't have to. As you work through questions 2 to 7, you'll see there are no text boxes for you to make comments. This is because we want you to put all your reasoning in question 8. You can easily navigate to question 8 using the navigation panel and return to the question you were working on. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to enter a sample judgment in question 8. As you can see, once you have completed question 8, assessing the overall credibility of the paper, it activates a button which allows you to proceed to the evidence level questions. When you click this button, it triggers a second navigation panel. This panel shows you the number of results to be evaluated in that paper. For this paper, there are 4 results to be evaluated. For this section of the elicitation, the particular result to be evaluated appears at the top of your screen, and you can click on Context to be shown the underlying hypothesis and statistical evidence for that result, as well as the corresponding page numbers in the paper. For question 9a, we are asking if your evaluation of this particular result deviates from your overall credibility judgment. That is why there is a pre-populated response, which is the credibility judgment you saw me enter earlier in question 8. As you can see, until you have completed all the evidence level evaluations, you will not be able to submit and proceed to round 2. As you work through your evidence level responses, the full list of results to be evaluated for that paper will also display on the left-hand panel. In most Bushel papers, you will also have one additional question, question 9C, appear for a single result. In question 9C, we ask you to evaluate the replicability of this specific result. This question will usually only appear once, since it was this particular result which was evaluated in phase 1 of the repliCATS project. This is the round 1 interface. Once you have completed your round 1 questions, you will be able to submit and go to round 2. This will take you back to the home screen. On the home screen, you can easily see which papers you have available to enter your round 2 judgment. Let's briefly take a look at a round 2 interface. The round 2 interface will display in much the same way. I will just very quickly show you a couple of key differences. In round 2, there are now 3 adjustable panels. The leftmost panel, which shows you the paper information, the middle panel, which shows you your group's aggregated responses before displaying the round 2 response boxes, and the rightmost panel, which displays detail and reasoning when available for that question. Similar to round 1, we encourage you to review and work through the paper level questions first. Once again, for this demonstration, I'm going to enter a sample credibility score and proceed to the evidence level questions. When you start reviewing the evidence level questions, you will see one final difference in question 9A. The round 2 responses are pre-populated with your round 1 response for that particular result. For an easy reference point, your round 2 credibility score will display here. The rest of the round 2 interface works in exactly the same way as round 1. So I'm just going to leave you with a few extra things you may find helpful. At any time, you can click on the links in the top static bar to access a suite of downloadable resources, including guides for participants and this video. There is also a quick reference glossary of terms. And the Contact Us button will trigger a web form. You can use that form to troubleshoot, report an error, or a breach in the code of conduct. Finally, and this is important, the repliCATS platform has been optimized for Google Chrome, so we strongly recommend you use Chrome to work through your claims. That's all from me. I hope you have fun assessing your papers.
Okay, fantastic. So I hope you can all hear me. So I just wanted to talk you through and have a closer look at exactly how the coming week is going to unfold. So you will have seen, and you will have gotten an email about this, that you've been assigned to a group which has 4 to 6 assessors. Hopefully you'll all find yourselves in the same or a close time zone. Each group has a dedicated facilitator. They will have introduced themselves on Slack to you, so hopefully you've been able to connect with them. And as a group, you'll be assessing 2 to 3 papers over the course of the week. And we'll ask you to meet with your group over a conference call or a Zoom meeting to discuss your group's judgments, as Fiona has just explained. So in terms of the actual timeline of the workshop, so this is a suggestion, so this is not a hard and fast rule. So there's a little bit of freedom in how you sort of organize yourselves as a group and individually, but obviously today is day 1 of the workshop, and we'd like you to have a look at Slack and meet your group and say hi to your facilitator if you haven't done that already. And to log on to the platform for the first time. And once you're in, you can obviously start assessing claims straight away. In the following days, you'll have some time to work on the papers and claims, and you can do that in your own time. Obviously, this is a remote workshop, so you'll have the freedom to sort of do that around your other responsibilities. So hopefully in those coming days, you'll be able to complete your round 1 judgments. So as you've seen in the video, there are text boxes for you to log your reasoning, but we found that it might be helpful for you to take some private notes if you think that is helpful as a memory aid for the discussion, which you'll have towards the end of the workshop with the rest of your group. In the meantime, we also encourage everybody to keep an eye on Slack if you're on Slack, or email for notifications of anything that's happening or questions that are being asked and answered that might be helpful to you, as well as chat within your group. And your facilitator will be in touch with you and the rest of your group as well to schedule a time and date for discussions, and make sure you put that in your calendars. So as I said, towards the end of the workshop week, we encourage people to have that discussion a bit later on, just to give people a bit of more time to complete their round 1 and have a good think about their judgments. So on the 21st and 22nd, we recommend that you have your discussion session. That's not to say you can't have it earlier if everybody in your group is ready. So again, up to you. Once you've had that discussion session, then comes a time to submit your round 2 estimates and update your estimates essentially. And once that's all done, keep an eye out for the wrap-up event. Now, in terms of the overall time commitment, you'll see that there are a few steps, obviously, in submitting your judgments, round 1, discussion, round 2. So this is just again a suggestion. So we think that sort of reading and getting familiarized with the paper should take not too long, about sort of 20 minutes per paper that you're assigned. Then you'll go into answering those paper level questions. That's the first 8 questions. Again, we think that shouldn't take too long for your first round, maybe 10 to 15 minutes for each paper, followed by answering the evidence level questions. So that'll depend a little bit on how many evidence level questions there are. As Fiona mentioned, that varies per paper. So sometimes you just might have 4, but it could be up to 10. So again, that'll vary a little bit. Your discussion session, we don't want to constrain you too much, but obviously it has to be manageable, and we are mindful that people are obviously volunteering their time to do this. So we think that about 20 to 30 minutes per paper should be sufficient to allow you as a group to discuss the judgments that are the most divergent, so the judgments that are the most interesting to discuss where the group is not in total agreement. And then after that, again, updating and entering your round 2 estimates should be a quick process. As you've seen in the video, some of those answers are pre-populated with your round 1 estimates. So it's really about thinking, do I want to change my mind after we've had the discussion, or am I happy with what I said in round 1? So that should be a little bit quicker than your round 1 judgments. So overall, that comes to about a 4-hour time commitment over the course of the week, is what we expect. Now, just a quick note on how to communicate with your group. So obviously you have your platform and functionality to communicate and comment. And then we've set up a Slack channel, various Slack channels for your group, and some general Slack channels for everybody. So on platform, that's where we want you to obviously assess the papers and the claims that are assigned and submit your reasons for your judgments. But there's also opportunity to comment and reply to group members' comments. You can access resources, and you can look at the glossary, and you can quickly also track your group and your progress via the community page. So the platforms really is the place to talk about and comment on the actual papers and the claims. The Slack is for you to have a chat about other things, so not specifically about your judgments, but other things that are happening in the workshop. You'll have your private channel with your group, where you have your facilitator ready as well, so they can answer any questions. You can use that to sort of troubleshoot or just ask questions of each other, and just have general chat with your group members, including organizing a time for your discussion session. And basically Slack is to get involved socially. There'll be some fun things happening on Slack during the week. As I said, there's a general channel which everybody has access to, everybody in the workshop. And there's also a random channel for sort of more social fun things to share if you feel like it. Further, in terms of communicating, we do encourage you to just have a lot of fun during the week and share your experience on your social media if you do that sort of thing. You can also show off your badges. So badges are earned when you meet certain targets or when you take certain actions. You will see them appear, and feel free to show them off. So I do have to emphasize that to protect the integrity of the SCORE program, please, you can share anything that happens in the workshop that's fun and how you're going, but do not share paper information or judgments. We do ask that because Fiona's spoken to you about sort of the machine learning teams, and other people should be blind to what's going on here. So please don't share that openly. I also wanted to encourage everybody to go and have a look at our code of conduct. It's important to the repliCATS team that everybody has a great and harassment-free experience in a safe and an inclusive environment. We also encourage everybody to speak up if anything's happening that is of concern to you. You can either contact Fallon if there's any breaches of the code of conduct that you're aware of, or you can contact us via the contact us button on platform, which opens up a form where you can let us know any feedback of any experiences that you've had during the course of the week. Right, okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to get you started. As was noted in the video, please do use Chrome on a laptop. That's what the platform's optimized for, so tablets won't work. You'll have received an email with your login details. So if you haven't logged on yet, go and have a look. Make sure you're able to log on. So your username is your email address that you use to sign up for the workshop, and your initial password is password, not capitalized in the initial email. I think there was an error and some people had some trouble logging on. Once you're in, you'll be prompted to change that password to something more secure, obviously. When you're in, also have a look. I mean, obviously what we've talked about today and the video will help you get started, but for more detailed guidelines, we have a full participant guide for assessing Bushel claims. There's also a cheat sheet if you want to have a quick look at what to do, and as a quick reminder, and all of that is available via the resources panel on the platform. Finally, if you do run into some trouble or you have questions, for practical workshop questions, your first go-to would be Slack. You can ask questions in the general channel or ask it your facilitator. And if they don't know, they can always get in touch with us. General questions about assessing claims. Again, the participant guidelines are very comprehensive, so you'll probably find the answer there. If it's still unresolved, just send us a query to the repliCATS contact email address. Same email address to use if you have any trouble logging on. We'll try to help you out. For other platform troubleshooting, as I said, there's a contact us button on the platform, and you can complete the web form and we'll look into it. As I mentioned, the code of conduct breaches, please do report in platform as well or to Fallon. And any other general repliCATS questions that are not answered, again, the repliCATS contact email address is the way to go.